This is the Horse Radio Network.
You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show, ideas for happy horsekeeping.
This is part 3 of the HRN host series on stall and stable. The saying goes, if you ask 10 different horse people how to do something, you'll get 10 different answers. I put that adage to the test by asking my HRN colleagues what they think qualifies as happy horsekeeping. In this episode, I sit down with Dr. Wendy Ying, my favorite veterinarian, host of the driving radio show, and the owner of 5 Elements for Animals, a holistic veterinary practice based in Sarasota, Florida. Dr. Ying is one of the brightest minds and voices in modern veterinary science, and I'm so happy to be back on the air with her to talk about how she keeps her horses happy and healthy in sunny Florida. So listen in. This is episode 84 of the Stall and Stable Show. I'm your host, Helena Harris. Today's Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Our sponsor this week is Load Trail Trailers. Buck and I are big fans of our Load Trail dump trailer. You see, our horse property is small, so keeping the barn and paddocks free from flies and odors is really important. Our dump trailer makes that possible, and easy. Transporting manure off property takes no time at all. The trailer is a breeze to hook up, it tows like a charm, and is as heavy duty as they come. Horse people have zero tolerance for equipment that can't handle serious everyday use. But our Load Trail trailer shows up for work every day, like a boss. For a list of trailer types and dealers near you, head over to loadtrail.com, or you can find them on Facebook and Instagram. Hi, listeners, and welcome back to another episode in my series with HRN hosts about happy horsekeeping. I'm so pleased to bring you my conversation today with Dr. Wendy Ying. Wendy and I go way back with Horse Radio Network. We're kindred spirits of a sort in that we both would make fabulous spies. Many years ago, Glenn did an episode on, I don't know what it was. It was an evening roundtable discussion with all the hosts. And I think the question was, if you could have picked any other career other than the one you have, what would it have been? And I think Wendy and I both picked spies. Now, Wendy has a whole lot more to offer than just a sense of adventure. She's the veterinarian at 5 Elements for Animals, a holistic veterinary practice where she offers acupuncture, chiropractic care, herbal therapy, and rehab programs for sport horses, farm animals, and pets. Dr. Wendy received her master's degree in Traditional Chinese Veterinary Medicine and is a visiting instructor at the Qi Institute. She has a lifetime of horse experience and grew up showing hunters in New England, then received her colors from the Los Altos Hounds while completing her undergraduate degrees in molecular biology and chemistry. Wendy imported, bred, and trained registered Irish drafts and RID sport horses in North Carolina and Virginia while completing her DVM from North Carolina State University. She competed in combined and pleasure driving with singles, pairs, tandems, and fours. Dr. Wendy has USEF national championship titles in both combined and pleasure driving. She and her handsome counterpart, Dr. Kyle, live on a farm in Sarasota with their horses, dogs, goats, and a flock of chickens, ducks, and geese. So let's not waste any more time and welcome Dr. Wendy to the show. Hi, Wendy, and welcome to Stall and Stable. This is your first time on my show.
Yes. Hi, Helena. Thank you so much for having me.
We go way back. Wendy, you were one of the OGs on the Horse Radio Network with the driving radio show.
That's right.
And gosh, our lives have gone through so many different changes. You're in Sarasota now, right?
Yeah, but the first time you interviewed me, I didn't know Glenn at all, right? So you guys called me because I was living in Kentucky and I had the four in hand up there and you guys were doing the WEG show, I think.
Yep.
But it could have been Horse in the Morning. I can't remember. But you called to interview me about that because I was one of the four in hand drivers.
That's right. We were both in complete awe of you. Glenn's like, you're not going to believe this. But this Wendy Ying, she's amazing.
Well, and he also didn't know I was a vet at the time. He thought I was just a driver. So then I remember in the interview, we started talking and I think you said, you're like, oh, you're a vet? And I was like, oh, Glenn didn't do his research.
What else is new?
But then Glenn came over and we drove him around the farm for his birthday. And then the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we attracts like. And you were just, obviously, we're born Horse Radio Network family. And of course, the first time you and I met in person, it was like we've known each other forever.
I know. That was so funny. It did feel like we had, like, there's some people you meet, you feel like, oh, I've known them forever.
Yeah. And I think Glenn and Jennifer have done a great job of just kind of sitting in the middle, staying the course, and attracting people who fit in with that mold perfectly.
Yeah.
We were so small when we started, when we launched the driving radio show, and now everyone knows horse radio. So you went from, now correct me wherever I'm go astray here. You went from Massachusetts to...
I was born in Massachusetts.
Right.
And then I remember this because I'm not a big snow fan. Everybody knows I am a big flip-flop person. And I remember it was Easter Sunday and it was late in April and it snowed. And I was like, I have got to get the hell out of here. This is too cold.
Yep.
And my dad was living in California at the time. And I called him. I said, I'm leaving here and I'm coming to college in California. I'm coming to live with you. And he's like, okay, great. And so I lived in California for the time I was in college. And then I came back to the East Coast for vet school. And I like California. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love it, but it's so expensive. And, to have horses there is that's almost impossible for normal people.
Yeah. And then you were in Kentucky for a time and then you finally landed in Florida.
Well, I went from I was thinking about this because of the barn, we're going to talk about how we do our barns. And after vet school, I was living in North Carolina and I had this little house and I had like about maybe 5 or 6 acres and the horses at home. And I was so excited because that was like the first time I lived that I had horses at home. But I was in vet school, so it wasn't like I could do much with them except for like feed them and kiss them and then, leave. But after vet school, I thought, okay, I am going to follow my dreams. I'm going to move to Virginia, hunt country. I'm going to have a big farm, blah, blah, blah. So I got this place. It was a little house, but it was like 20 acres. And it was like right in Bluemont, Virginia in Loudoun County. And there were 7 hunts within a 30-minute drive of me. And 2 of them I could hack to.
Oh, my God.
I know. And it was so fun. And I thought, this is what I always wanted. But this is how it pertains to stall and stable. That's what I always wanted if I was like super rich and I had help and I didn't have to work.
That's what you would do.
Because I realized like when, you think you always want more land, but it's like, it's hard to take care of a farm that big.
20 acres is a lot.
20 acres is a lot. And like, luckily I was surrounded by other horse people. So there's a guy down the road with a big, huge, like 16-foot bat wing mower that can come mow my lawn or like, all the pastures. But still, it was like a lot to take care of. And I was working. I mean, I still got out and hunted because thank God it was, all close. But it was what I thought I always wanted. But then when I actually lived it, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then after Virginia, I moved down to Florida for a while and I was renting places and I was showing a lot. That's when I was doing the most of my driving, showing. I always call that the time when I like ran off to join the circus. and then I settled in Sarasota in like 2011. So right after Kentucky. I was only in Kentucky for a couple months. And then I love Sarasota so much. And I was renting out here for a while. And then Kyle and I finally bought this farm here. And we have about 6 acres. And it's really great because I have the horses at home, but yet we're pretty close to the beach. We're like a 30-minute drive to the beach.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know,
and it's easy to take care of. 5 or 6 acres is a lot easier.
to me, that's the perfect size.
Yeah, I would always be looking over, like the grass is always greener if I hadn't experienced that.
So you lived in pretty much all of the horsey hubs. You were in New England, California, Kentucky, the Mid-Atlantic, and now Florida. I mean, I wouldn't say Sarasota is like Ocala, but you're pretty darn close, and it's got a nice horse population there.
And I think that's another thing too, is I almost moved to Ocala, because I thought when I moved back to Florida, of course I was looking in Ocala to move to Ocala.
Yeah.
But I had friends here, Judy and Phil, who my friends down here in Sarasota that I knew from driving. And they said, oh, come to our place for the winter. It's only 2 hours to Ocala. And I'm like, I never even thought about Sarasota. And I never thought of it as being very horsey. And it's not super horsey, but I thought, well, I mean, why not go to Sarasota, right?
Yeah.
And I got down here and I was like, this is great. It's actually, for me, because I did live in all those horsey places, I thought, well, you know what? I would rather be closer to the beach, and I can drive to Ocala. But there's another thing. If I hadn't lived in all those horsey places, I'd always be thinking I wanted to live in like where everybody's diehard horsey.
Bingo.
But now I have friends that aren't even horsey. That's never happened in my life.
You're a well-rounded individual. Took you a couple of decades.
Yeah, I can actually go to cocktail parties and talk about something other than my horse. I've grown.
But how many horses do you have on your property?
Right now, I have 4. I have Duke and Dante, who were my 2 leaders, and I also drove them both single. They were like my most successful competition horses, and they're 21 now. So they're retired, but we still ride them and drive them down the road. And then I have a horse I bred while I was in vet school. She's an Irish Draft Cross, and she actually, I sold her to some friends of mine, and she's been passed around through a group of friends of Irish Draft lovers. And then when she got old and finished her broodmare career, they sent her back to me. So she lives here. She's 24, I guess. And then I have the baby horse, I call him, is a 12-year-old Welsh Cobb Arab cross that's related to Duke and Dante. I bought him to go into the team when I was still driving team.
Okay. And so which of those horses are still, I mean, you do a little bit of work with Duke and Dante?
I ride them all. They all get ridden. It's
Awesome.
just, I don't show anymore.
Where do you ride?
Oh, I live in this great neighborhood. It's like, it's an equestrian neighborhood. So everybody has about 5 acres. And then we have trails all through the neighborhood. But also on the roads, they have a big wide swath. Like there's 25 feet on either side of the pavement on the road where people can't pull their fence in too close to the road. So it's great for driving,
Yeah.
I can drive on the pavement or on the side.
It's a soft shoulder.
Yeah. And then our neighborhood borders 60,000 acres of park. So it's half state park and half county park.
Did you know that they had I would never have thought of Sarasota and equestrian community in the same breath.
No, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know that. And then I got down here. I was like, oh my God, it's so great. You know what else? Let me tell you something else that I never thought of. That is like a huge perk.
Yeah.
When you're young and you're dreaming about having a barn, you always think, oh my God, it's so cool. Like I can go and pick up my hay in the field and then stack it in my barn. But like once you do that once, you never want to stack hay again, right?
Nope.
So,
especially if you're doing it in shorts and a tank top.
I know. And it's like super hot. You're sweaty. But if you never have done it before, it sounds so great and you feel so accomplished. But if you have to do it, it sucks. So here in Sarasota, everybody has a little farm. It's very rare for anybody to have a great big farm. So all of the feed stores deliver it. It doesn't matter how big or small your order is. And they just come and they just, have a key to my barn and open the door, load up the hay and my grain, everything, and go.
So this is a perfect segue into the what do you feed your horses segment of this conversation. So where do you get your hay? What kind of hay do you feed? I know that there are two camps down there in Florida. Some feed what's grown locally and others have their forage shipped in. What do you do?
Well, that is kind of controversial, and there's positives and negatives to both sides. But my horses grew up on coastal because, except for the Irish draft horse, they all had lived in Florida before I bought them, and they were already on coastal, eating coastal. Mm-hmm. Also, for people that aren't in Florida and California, our hay is so expensive, you would not believe it. Like, I feed the coastal Bermuda grass, which is essentially newspaper, right? Is their forage.
Yeah.
And I pay $9.50 a bale. But if I wanted to give them like grass hay, like orchard alfalfa, something that a lot of people do, the orchard alfalfa, that's the next level up.
Yeah.
That's $18 to $20 a bale, a 40-pound bale.
A 40-pound bale. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
Yeah. So, I have big, fat, retired horses, and they're fine on coastal. Coastal, the University of Florida did a study that showed that coastal hay actually does help with sand colic. But there's different kinds of coastal. There's some very fine, like angel hair type coastal. And our local feed store has more of a thicker stemmed hay. Looks kind of like Timothy, like a thin Timothy.
Okay. But you don't find it any less, it's not like your horses do just fine on it. It's not like they're nutritionally compromised because they...
Well, yeah. And like I said, mine are retired, and they're also all half Welsh cob. So they're half pony.
They're hardy.
Or the other one's Irish draft cross. So they're, if I had a thoroughbred or a straight Arab, I might need to give them more food.
Do you supplement your horse's forage diet with anything?
I give them alfalfa pellets. One actually is recovering from EPM, and he really needs a lot of alfalfa because he needs high protein because I need to build up his muscles again. Mm-hmm. And the others just get it for like a little treat. And then, we have flies here year round. So I give them a feed through fly, a supplement that, won't let the flies hatch out.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that too.
And I really think that's important, especially when you're only on a small acreage.
Oh, goodness. We have a dump trailer, so I haul my manure out to our local dump, to our transfer station.
Oh, that's good.
It's great. They're about every 2 weeks I fill up my dump trailer. But there's no way on my small property that I could manage a manure pile and all of the bugs that go with it.
Oh, could you imagine?
I couldn't even keep up with the fly predators. I found that the feed through was effective and convenient.
Yeah, I think so too. Our neighborhood actually doesn't allow us to have a manure pile.
So what do you do with your manure?
I just spread mine because mine aren't in stalls. So they're really not, like, I drag my pasture every week. And then I have one that does have kind of a run-in stall that I clean out, and that I spread it on a dry part of my pasture. Like, I have this sandy part. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to improve the soil there. May or may not work.
My horses I'm like a huge proponent of 24/7 turnout, but giving your horses access to shelter and letting them choose when they want to come in and, what conditions they need to get away from. Do your horses have the ability to come in and out of these run-ins, or just those two horses?
Yeah, I don't have any stalls technically. When I moved here, one of the things we loved about this house, it had this big... The person that built this house was a car collector. So they built this big, huge garage that had 4-car garage for his cars. So being a carriage person, I was like, oh my God, I love that. So, and that, I was going to turn that put run-in stalls there. But it was a little bit wet there. Like, if you had horses there, I think the ground will get torn up. So we ended up that's my storage building for the hay and for the carriages and our lawnmower and all that. So we built a 36 by 36 pole barn. And then I have like 2 pastures off of it. So there's one main pasture, and then there's one little pasture that's where my EPM horse is. And he has his own little private stall that I just made with like cattle panels. Then the rest of the So he is like a 12 by 12 little shelter, part of that barn. And then the other horses have the rest of that barn. And I have some cattle panels up. So I have like a 12 by 24 foot like work area where I have stall mats and my tack trunk and all this stuff. And then I have the fans in there. Like they can come in and stand behind their fan.
Yeah, that's what mine do.
Yeah. Because horses love their fans.
They really do. I'm like, what are you guys doing in your stalls? It's a beautiful day out. And I remembered that I left the fans blowing. I keep them at foot level too, because the less my horses stomp, the better for everybody.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I do that too. I think it's much better to have it, and like I tilt it up so it comes like, it shoots up at them.
Yeah. Now, where do your horses lay down? Because in certain seasons, my horses will nap and snooze or sleep deeply on a little hill in the field, but they almost always sleep in their stalls.
Yeah, mine sleep in that barn. They come in and they sleep in there. But I have one, it's so funny because her mother used to do this exact same thing. I mean, it's hot here in Florida and she'll lay on her side in the burning hot sun, just sleeping in the middle of pasture like she's dead. And I always I have to look out there. Is she breathing? But she does it all the time. And her mother was the exact same way.
That's funny.
And she doesn't, how horses, they need a friend to watch them when they lay out and sleep like that. She doesn't care.
That's Brody. I have there's a satellite photo of our property and you can see Brody from space.
Oh my God. And that's why you think that they're dead, because normal horses don't lay like that. Only dead ones lay like that.
There's no other horse around. Like usually Susie will be standing watch, or if she's sleeping, Brody will be standing watch. This was like a springtime satellite photo and there's nothing around except this big white belly in the far corner of the field. But I find it funny, you're a vet, you are an experienced long-term horse person, and you still need to go out and poke your horse to make sure she's alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's not normal behavior. But I guess it is genetic or something.
I know. Well, I struggle with how much bedding should I buy? What should I use? Is it wasting money? But they do lay down in there. So I find myself invariably putting some nice fluffy shavings down so that they can get a nice, good night's rest.
Yeah.
But what do you put then in the area? What do you use?
Well, when I built this barn, we brought in all this dirt, all this loose fill dirt. And in Florida, fill dirt is essentially really soft, sandy loam. Mm-hmm. So that whole flooring is this soft dirt, and then I have a little area where there's some stall mats, but they like to sleep on the dirt. And then every couple years I bring more dirt in, and I can muck it, it's sandy, so it's really easy to muck. I tend not to feed them in there because then, when you feed them in there, for some reason, if you feed them in there run-in, they always want to pee and poop in there.
I know.
I don't know what that's about, but so I try to not feed them in there. In the summertime, I do feed them in there because of the fans, but
yeah,
I try not to. And then I have shell around the outside because I don't like there to be mud around the barn.
Yeah. I was just down in Ocala a few weeks ago, and I guess it's the rainy season this time of year. Mm-hmm. You guys get a lot of rain and moisture. What does the sandy soil kind of prevent, what we typically have to fight up here in the north, with mud and stuff like that? What kinds of things do you experience with the rainy season in Florida?
Well, in Florida, having the sandy soil is really great because we don't have a lot of mud. I hate having mud at my gate, but that always happens, right? That's the nature of dirt. So we don't have those kind of issues in Florida because it's sandy and it drains off. But the place I was at before was a very flat area. And you don't know this until you live in Florida. But then when you get to the rainy season, their pasture was always underwater. So they were up to their fetlocks in water when they were turned out. And it makes for good grass. But, their feet really fall apart. And you tend to see a lot of thrush and a lot of haired heels and a lot of scratches. This place that we have now is for Florida is like a hill. This used to be the like winter this was like my whole subdivision was like a giant cattle farm in the olden days. And this was like the winter pasture for the cows. Then when the county put in this neighborhood, when the developers put in the neighborhood, they dug all these canals in here to get some dry land to build the houses. And we're just lucky enough to have like a little bit of a slope that when it rains here, our place all drains down to the drainage ditch.
That's priceless.
I know.
It's priceless. And as someone who lives on a slope, my property's on a slope, and all water that comes from higher points of our property, it drains down. We're literally in a hollow, a geographic hollow, and it drains down to a salt pond. So we're very lucky to have that drainage. But I watch the water, and I realize every time it rains how important the topography is of your farm. Right. And if you are in a flat, like we all want that perfect flat spot, right? Because that's where we think, that's where we want to ride. Right. But flat is really not a farm's best friend.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So you got the sand and you've got the slope.
Yeah, we really lucked out.
In terms of keeping your horses in, you've got this wonderful property. What kind of fencing do you have on your property?
Oh my God. When I first moved here, okay, this house was like so run down, but I was happy it was run down because we would have never been able to buy it if it wasn't, right? Yeah. Because, you always want to buy the worst house in the neighborhood, right? So this house was owned by this crazy people. They were like pseudo horse people. The guy kind of fancied himself a horse person, but he was like, well, from what the neighbors say, he was just crazy. But he had tons of barbed wire everywhere, and there were these little paddocks, and he had like a hog pen, and he had, I don't know, it was just crazy. And all the fence was falling down. So when I bought it, I knew we were going to have to put up fence, but I had to clear the land because the perimeter fence was there, but it was engulfed by Florida jungle. Like you couldn't even really see our house from the road because, our neighborhood's kind of in this thing where they're not sure they want to enforce the deed restrictions and whatnot. So this was like just a dump. So we had to clear the land and then we had to put in new fence. But in the meantime, I moved my horses over here. I thought, oh, well, I'm just put them in this temporary electric tape for now. Right? Yeah. But my fence guy, who I love, he just kept putting me off. And they were in this electric tape for like, it must have been 6 months. Like, I can't believe they didn't get out because I never connected it to the battery. I just put up the tape.
Lucky you.
I know, they stayed in and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But now I have like wood fence around the perimeter. And then there's wood fence inside for the paddocks. And then like our house probably sits on an acre and the horses have the rest.
That must give you peace of mind to have the perimeter fully fenced in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, the other day, oh God, like we usually keep the front gate closed, but it was raining. So we just drove in and I was like, oh, I'll close the gate later. And I never did. I never closed the front gate. But I like to have that closed at night in case something happens, right? Yeah. So I went out and walked the dog at like 6 a.m. and I saw the open gate and I'm like, oh, I should go close this gate. But I'm like, I'm right about to go feed. I'm not going to do it. So then I hear this galloping, the dogs are barking, blah, blah, blah. And the horses are out and they're out in the street now. Oh, God. So, and they're over going to my neighbor's house. He has great grass because he doesn't have any horses. And so I get out and like call them back in. Luckily, I just shake the bucket and they come back in. But I went to the cameras to see when they got out, and they got out after I had walked the dog. So I should have actually gone and closed the gate. I don't know if they're testing me or what.
Oh my God. Our property is surrounded by woods and like nature conservancy land. So if my horses get out, they're going to hurt themselves like by tripping over a stone wall in the woods or, landing in a bog or something. We are at the end of a long dirt laneway. So there's only one way out to the road. And I went to all of my neighbors and I was like, listen, I got a couple of punks living down at the end of the laneway. If you see one of them or both of them coming your way, just block the laneway. All you need to do is shoo them away from the laneway. If they're headed that way, don't chase them. Just block them.
Right.
And, sure enough, one day they got out and my neighbor sent me a text and she said, Brody's grazing on our front lawn and he's giving our chickens the side eye. She said, but I've got my car parked across the laneway. And the laneway is only like 14 feet wide. It's really narrow. But I was so grateful that she parked her car like across the laneway. And I thought, I really need to put a gate at the top of our property. The road is the only thing I'm worried about.
Right.
But
that'll give you a lot of peace of mind.
It will. And we've got plenty of stone walls and brush that I think can keep them in. But it's that peace of mind where I'm always forgetting something.
Me too.
I don't know about you, but I've gotten up in the middle of the night like, shit, did I forget to close the gate? Did I forget to latch the gate?
Or turn the water off?
Oh, always. I've tapped my well twice, much to my husband's chagrin. I was like, shit, I did it again.
I know. That's the worst. I wish there was some alarm. Somebody needs to make an app with an alarm that you left your water on.
There is a product. There's something out there. In fact, somebody I used to hunt with designed it.
Really?
Yeah, I should find it and post it in the show notes for this.
I need it.
I don't know if it's an alarm or if it's an automatic shutoff, but I need somebody to remind me. All right, so fencing, we're going to be all over the place. Let's go back to because you do feed your horses some hay. Do you have grass that they can graze?
Oh yeah, they have grass.
Okay, but do you also feed them hay?
Yeah.
How do you feed them hay?
There's probably a certain time of year I don't need to feed them hay, but I can't help it. I can't help myself.
I mean, even if my horses were on lush green pasture, I would want to feed hay as well. There's something about it's just I don't know. I feel like it absorbs. It makes a nice buffer, especially if they're stressed and they're making a little too much acid.
Yeah.
Now there's some new studies out about how high we should hang our hay nets, slow feed, feeding on the ground versus feeding at nose height or whatever. How do you feed your horses hay?
I have two ways. I have over the fence feeders, but I have it they don't have to, it's not real high. It hangs off the top rail, but my horses are about 15 hands and their neck's probably level at the area where they eat their hay, or I throw it on the ground sometimes. Because I think they're better off eating off the ground. The one with the EPM, I've had to change the height of his hay over the course of his disease, because sometimes for a while his neck was really sore and he couldn't eat from the ground.
Oh.
So I hung it at where he was comfortable. And also I realized that he couldn't swallow. His EPM was to the point where he was having trouble, his throat was a little paralyzed.
Oh gosh.
So he was trying to drink from the ground, but he couldn't bring it up. And I was so glad, this horse I never thought was going to live, and he has recovered, and that could change. When with EPM, you always have to be prepared for a relapse. But I've never been so glad to have the horses at home before, because I would have had to euthanize him had I had to board him, because I needed to be with him all the time. I would have never noticed that he couldn't drink with his bucket on the ground. So then I hung buckets for him and he could drink out of the bucket. And now he can drink on the ground again. But that's something I wouldn't have known.
I'm really glad that you made that observation.
Yeah. It's not, you shouldn't feel guilty if you have to do that.
No.
It would be better for him. If I was boarding him, the best thing for him would have been to euthanize him, because I couldn't expect, maybe there are places or wonderful people you could pay gazillions of dollars to stare at your horse all day.
Yeah, they'll be 4 hours away from where you live.
But they probably have horses that they are obsessing over. I can't expect them to also obsess over mine.
The idea is we don't want our horses to suffer. So if you have to make a decision to euthanize in order to prevent your horse from suffering, that's a hard decision that we have to make. But You dig down deep and you find the wherewithal to make that decision in their best interest. One thing that really bothers me is when the general horse public assumes that backyard horse owners don't really know a lot.
Yeah.
And I will argue that actually we know quite a bit because we have to micromanage. Maybe we don't have to, but we do. We can micromanage our horse's environment in order to keep them comfortable. If we ask them to adapt to this very human environment, we kind of owe them a little comfort. We kind of, it's a moving target. Their well-being is a moving target. And whether you've got ponies or draft horses or thoroughbreds, you can have one of each. And then you really have a moving target. So, right? The fact that, one horse's hay net is 2 feet above the ground and the other horse's hay net is 4 feet above the ground. It's nice to be able to make the observations about what our horses need and then adapt. The tools that we use to feed our horses are not very complicated. It's a woven net. But I find it very gratifying that I can say my mare needs to eat off the ground and my gelding is fine with a net at nose height.
And, I feel like we all make mistakes, so, there are times like when I left the gate open and they could have gotten out and got hit by a car. It was dark out. But, if you do make a mistake like that, don't beat yourself up. Just you're trying to do your best. And when you have them at home, they're like your pets. And every once in a while, things happen. They get caught up in things, or like you said about the stone wall.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? You're just doing your best, and it's great to have them at home. Sometimes better off boarding because they're probably a little bit safer.
Yes, this is true. We get kind of comfortable.
Yeah.
Like
we let them out in the front yard and
we're waiting for the contractors that put my riding ring in completely trashed all of my turnout, all the grass in the area. And so we've had to reestablish, we replanted, and we're waiting patiently for this grass to grow. And, I'm going to sacrifice a couple of seasons of good grass for these guys. So I've let them in the backyard. We put up some electric tape and whatever, and they're just having a grand old time in there. And it's pretty secure. They can't really get out. But we have an oak tree. And Brody has decided that acorns are his new delicacy.
Oh, no.
I was like, sorry, buddy, you're going back into the dry lot. Susie is a little too dense. She hasn't figured out the fact that acorns might taste good, so she's okay out there. But one day, Susie's like, my office window looks out onto my backyard and then onto my to my barn behind it. And I'm like, Susie's a little agitated. What's happening? I said, oh, boy, Brody must have gotten out. So I get up and I go out into the backyard and I'm looking for him. I'm like, Brody. I get the grain and I'm shaking it, which that's always a sure thing. No Brody.
Uh-oh.
I don't hear him galloping. There's beautiful lush grass in the front yard. He could not have gone far. Where is this horse? So like 30 seconds later, he comes out from underneath the trees. We have these pine trees, thick pine. This
oh my God.
Huge, thick pine trees where I would have to duck to get under. And there's like a row of 20 of them. And it's so thick. And he was under those trees.
And, I wonder what he was doing in there.
I don't know. I'm like, how did you even fit? And what's in there? That's interesting. Thankfully, there's a stone wall, just on the other side of them. So he couldn't go any further. But I'm like, what are you doing? Spelunking?
What? They always love to go in this place that's like way too small for them too.
Yeah.
Right? Like if there's this little thing and you say, oh, he can only fit his head in there in between the garage and this whatever. They always want to go in that skinny little space where they don't fit.
Yep. So, yeah, like you said, we take these liberties because we're like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I think I got an eye on what's happening over there. You do have to forgive yourself for these mistakes.
But, we get really comfortable with horses because we're used to being around them. But you do always have to keep in the back of your mind that if they could just run off at any minute. Yeah. And usually they're going to not hurt people. They're going to hurt themselves.
That's true.
Which is worse.
That's true. So and I think the longer we work with horses, that we've been around them, the more we have to keep ourselves in check because we take liberties that new people might not take.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so we did fencing, we did hay, we did feed, we did stalls. Who takes care of your horses? Who does the barn chores?
Well, I do most of the barn chores, but like if I'm working and I am getting home after dark or late, then Kyle will do it. But I have it set up that is so easy. That's another thing about having your horses at home. So I do most of my stuff in the morning and then I set everything up at night. So at night, all he has to do is walk into the barn where the horses stay. And I have all their hay in there for the day. Like I bring up one bale for them and then he can just throw it over the fence. Because you know how I had said I have a little 12 by 24 area in there?
Mm-hmm.
So from that person area, you can put hay into all the feeders for all 4 horses.
Right.
So he can just put the hay in there and then, do the waters and then close up the chickens. And it takes maybe 10 minutes.
I'd love you even more because of this. To set up your barn or your workflow or your system or whatever it is, your chores, so that anybody can come in and feed and water your horses is something that you all, listeners, that you all should put at the top of your priority list. Make your horses easy to take care of by someone who's not you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because when you need a horse sitter, if you have these little things like this one needs this and you have to take, I know there are some things that have to be done a certain way and you have to finagle things, but that's one of the things that I love having the horses at home is I can set it up. I like it to be easy. Like I like to be able to feed everybody from one area. And I have this pet peeve. I like to be able to open gates with one hand because I always have something in the other hand.
Yes. Yes. There was a post somewhere on social media about the kinds of snaps and hooks that you use in your barn. And somebody was complaining about double-ended brass snaps or double-ended snaps.
Yeah.
And
because they rust.
Well, I get solid brass ones and they tend to be pretty smooth. And while there's a small risk that a horse could get a lip or a nose caught on that little, lever, it is the least of all evils when it comes to snaps and hooks in your barn. But the thing I love the most about those snaps is that I can use them with one hand.
Yeah, that's true. The double-ended, that's true.
And again, it's you either have a flake of hay in the other hand or you have a horse.
Precariously balanced.
Right. Yep.
And you're trying to not let the horse chomp it when you're trying to open the gate.
Exactly. Listeners, if you have one takeaway from this entire conversation, it's that.
One-handed gates. You know what else? Something that changed my life?
What?
And I don't know why it took me so long to do it, but I got a hay wagon. Like, I don't know why I never had a hay wagon. I was like, well, what the hell was I doing? Because I would carry the flakes to wherever, but the hay wagon, it keeps everything in there, fits one bale, and that's all I need for my guys. And I can carry multiple hay flakes for multiple horses, but like, why? It has reduced the amount of hay in my bra by like 80%.
There is your second takeaway, listeners. Get a hay wagon. Sometimes, I've been using a wheelbarrow, but a wheelbarrow always gets a flat tire or it rusts or something goes wrong, and then you're down to one wheelbarrow, and I can't put my hay in a poopy wheelbarrow.
No, I can't either. That's why you need a dedicated hay wagon.
All right, I'm gonna get myself a hay wagon. I like that.
The hay wagon I got this hay wagon at Tractor Supply, so it has little it's like a dump wagon. You can dump it by hand, but it has this long handle, so you can actually hook it to your golf cart and tow it too if you want, if you don't want to pull it by hand. And Kyle one year put the never get flat tires on it.
Where did you get those? Because I got to tell Buck about them.
I think he got it on Amazon.
Okay.
They're like plastic tires that don't have air in them, so they can never go flat.
That will be on my Christmas list. We are constantly
That's why Kyle's the best horse husband right there. The never flat tires on my hay wagon.
And you've set up your barn so that If he needs to feed your horses, it's easy enough. He won't complain because it's easy.
No, he likes it. He likes it. He's
All right.
great.
There are 5 disaster prevention things that I want to talk about, but if we get to all of them, great. If not, then whatever. But this is important. What best practices do you put into place to prevent colic?
Well, first of all, they're horses, right? So yes, we have to take preventative measures, but everybody that owns a horse is going to have you're going to lose a horse to colic if you have horses long enough. And it's nobody's fault. Okay. They're horses. But for me, the way I have my horses out 24/7 is really helpful because I think when you have 24/7 turnout, you have less incidence of colic. Sand colic is an issue here in Florida, where I am. So when I do feed on the ground, I have like these little stall mats that I have out there, and I try to throw it on the stall mat. Of course, they're going to get some hay somewhere else, but at least they're not always eating it off the ground. And then also to avoid the sand colic, I'm lucky that this area has a little bit, it's not completely like sugar sand. There's a lot of dirt in our soil.
Yeah.
But that's probably one of the reasons why I feed hay year round. I don't want them to overgraze the pasture and then start pulling up the grass by the roots. Of course, always have enough water. And I really am a big fanatic about my water being clean, my buckets. I dump my buckets every day. Even if it's like half full, I still dump it out and I put in new water.
I can't stand the tiniest bit of film in my buckets. And my horses prefer to drink from the water troughs outside. Birdie will drink wherever he can, but Susie definitely prefers the outside water troughs. I put my hay, if I'm not feeding hay in nets, I put my hay in big water. They're empty, but the black plastic or rubber water troughs.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it keeps the mess to a minimum, but it also, because my barnyard is sand, and so I actually have a small risk of sand colic. So I put my hay in there when I want them to eat from the ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. We cannot prevent colic, but we can minimize the risk. So I think I really like your tactics there, and I use all of those, all of the above. The other thing that we experience, whether you're boarding at a commercial facility or at home, are paddock injuries. Horses get goofy out there, and I'm constantly trying to convince, especially some my clients and people I know at the upper levels, like highly competitive elite horse people who don't turn their horses out because they are afraid their horses are going to get hurt.
Right.
And there's a trade-off there. What kinds of things do you do or do you think are possible to help, again, minimize the risk of paddock injuries?
This might not be possible for everybody because depending on your ground, but like in Florida, if they're not working really hard, they don't really need hind shoes. So not having hind shoes does a lot for pasture kick injuries. Or if they're very worried about pasture injuries and turnout, they're going to only turn out the horse alone. So you can make sure that you have safe fencing, obviously. Maybe make sure that they know their paddock. If you're going to turn them out for a couple hours in the day so they can see their whole paddock. So sometimes, when we're traveling at shows or whatnot, and you get someplace late and they've been in the trailer and you think, oh, I would love to turn them out for a minute. But if it's really dark, horses can accommodate for the darkness, but that's always a danger when it's like low light like that for them.
Yeah.
And some horses can't be out alone. Some horses will fret if they're out alone and can't see another horse. And then they'll just stand there and weave and run around and do crazy things. So I think you have to know your horse, know what he likes and doesn't like, and try to set up the best situation for him.
Knowing your horse is a key component to this, because if you have the ability to be around when your horse is turned out, and let's say he or she's kind of getting a little amped up, there's amped up where they're anxious and checked out and they forget their own personal safety and you need to go and intervene. And there's times when you're like, yep, you know what? She's just blowing off steam and I think she's pretty level-headed about it. I'm going to let her go for a while. And if she doesn't settle, then I'll go out there and interfere. But knowing when your horse is sanely running around versus insanely running around and when you need to get involved. You've got obviously a good grasp on what your horses need for mental health. They have companions, they've got quality care, they have the freedom to choose what makes them comfortable so they can stand in front of their fans when they want to. They've got food available at all times. What about hurricane preparedness? Do you have a hurricane plan for your horses?
Oh, yeah, I definitely have a hurricane plan. We stay here no matter what. And it's because, I'm a vet, we have a practice. I have to stay here. Especially with the last hurricane, people were evacuating and then it was following everybody up 95. And I think that's a big ordeal. Not that I couldn't take them somewhere if I really needed to go, but I sometimes feel like I want them in the barn, but most people feel like they're safer outside. And also Kyle calls me like he doesn't like me to have any Jed Clampett things, any Jed Clampett projects. Yeah. So when hurricane season does come, we put everything away. So we have the minimized flying objects. Yeah. And then they wear a fly mask and I write my name on their side with like paint, with the animal markings. But I do have a backup plan if I like totally chicken out for leaving them outside. Our house is concrete block. And so I can set up the garage for stalls. Like they can all stand in there in standing stalls. Yep.
Do you have a generator?
Oh, yeah. That's the first thing Kyle did when we bought this house. We live in Sarasota, but we're like the last town at the end. We're not the last town, but the last neighborhood at the end of the county. So like we lost power for 10 days during Irma. So 10 days is a long time to go without power. Luckily, we have a pond on the property, so the horses can always get water. They actually enjoy drinking out of the pond. And I have an aerator in there, so it's very like clear, nice water. But, you need electricity. And especially like in Florida after the hurricanes, the mosquitoes are so bad. They have to have the fan and their mosquito spray. Yeah. So the generator is really a help. Yeah. Plus, I need coffee. I couldn't go 11 days without.
Are you on well water or city water?
Yeah, we're on well water.
Well water. I mean, in the Northeast, you've got one blizzard in the winter and you're toast. So when Buck and I bought this house, we were only here 1 year and we were like, we're getting a generator. But I still fill my clean. I have one clean plastic garbage bin that I don't put any garbage in, and I save that. I fill it with water. Even though we've got the generator, it's nice to just be able to dunk one of your 5-gallon buckets in there, and you've got, fresh water all the time. So, I could probably talk to you, Wendy, for like another 2 hours.
Me too. I love to talk about the horses.
Well, it was really cool to get to know more about your place, your farm, what you've been up to, and the driving radio show is now retired, but you're still going to be making appearances on HRN. Tell everybody what you're up to. You tell them about your private practice and then where you can be online, where we can find you.
Well, I have a private practice here in Florida. Kyle is a chiropractor, and I obviously do the acupuncture, and my vet focus is traditional Chinese veterinary medicine or like holistic care. So we do that. And then we also have a website, drwendyying.com. That's drwendyying.com. And I have a blog there that talks about holistic care for horses and pets. And we have some herbal supplements. And then I'll be coming on HRN to do some TCVM segments like I had been doing on the driving radio show. And then also one of our regular guests, Kathleen Hake from the Carriage Association of America, does these super history segments about carriages. And she's going to be coming on Horses in the Morning with her history segments also. So we'll still talk about driving. I won't have to do the show, like Glenn will have to do the setup. and I'll just be a guest.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe when coaching weekend returns to Newport, maybe you and Kyle can put that on your radar and you guys can come up and do coaching weekend up here because it's fantastic.
I've been to Newport to tour the mansions, but I've never been when coaching weekends there, and I've always wanted to do that.
It will stop you in your, like, jaw-dropping, stop you in your tracks, history come alive. I will put links to everywhere that we can find Dr. Wendy. You just go to stallandstable.com and you can find it in this episode's show notes. Dr. Wendy Ying, thank you so much for joining me. I loved this.
Oh, thank you so much, Helena. It was fun.
Well, I would be very surprised if y'all did not absolutely love Dr. Wendy the way I do after listening to this episode. She's super fun, and what you see is what you get with Wendy. Just a really smart, warm, adventurous person. If you ever get a chance to meet her, do it. You'll make an instant friend. So thanks once again, listeners, for following along in this series with HRN hosts. We'll be back in 2 weeks or 1 week. We'll be back in 1 week, I think, with another one. I might mix a couple of other episodes in there. So you're just going to have to subscribe to the show to make sure that you don't miss any of these fun episodes. I do have a small favor to ask. If you like Stall and Stable, please share this episode with a friend. Share any of our episodes with your friends. Social media on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you think like-minded horse people will appreciate what we're talking about. We need to spread the word. We need to get Stall and Stable out there and in the ears of as many horse people as possible. Together, we can change the world for horses. It's our responsibility, but it's also our joy. So I hope you'll help me in doing that by sharing the Stall and Stable show. And if you need help or advice with your business or your barn, go up to stallandstable.com and book a coaching session with me. It's simple, it's easy, and you'll walk away feeling supported and more knowledgeable. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.